Hello, good morning, students. Today, in the connection of the story A Cup of Tea, the character of female heroine or main character is going to be discussed. Rosemary Fell is the chief character who is introduced in the beginning of the story. How she is interested in purchasing old things and is fond of in antique things. The character of Rosemary Fell has been presented with her beautiful personality, and I introduce myself as a Dr. DR.S.R.BHARGAVA Associate Professor, Department of English. She is introduced as the main character in the story of A Cup of Tea, written by Catherine Mansfield. As we have discussed the introduction of Catherine Mansfield in the previous session, she has limited range and her characters are memorable because of the situations, their nature and characteristics. She explores the inner recesses of the human psyche. Catherine Mansfield talks about the inner or human psychology of the characters, of the readers, of the characters in the story. Her short stories dramatize human emotions, creating situations which are at once tender and brutal. She is known as the writer of human characters because she has universal appeal of human characters who not only feel but think about the human social beings. In the story A Cup of Tea, Rosemary Fell is portrayed as a very complex character. She is the protagonist of the story, one who seems happy and good hearted on surface, but deep within her she is just like any other woman suffering from envy and pain. The story starts with the statement. We see that she is not a simple character. She is a very complex character. She is the protagonist, the main character who talks about social life, social service, and she is the spokesman of the writer. She appears very tender hearted, but so far as her inner human character is considered, she suffers the feeling of jealousy and pain because jealousy is very powerful in the story than her true love. The story starts with the statement, these lines, Rosemary Fell was not exactly beautiful. And another statement, she was young, brilliant, extremely modern, exquisitely well dressed, amazingly well read. So the both characters, both lines seems to be very controversial, but they talk about her conflict or nature, how she appears on surface and how she feels in depth. By this expression of writer, we can say that she is brilliant but not beautiful. The story portrays Rosemary as a rich lady, one who is not just rich, rather comfortably rich. She is rich, no doubt it, because she goes to Curzon Street for shopping. She purchases jewelry books, antique things, because she has a expensive car and she is wealthy. She wants to purchase whatever she likes. She is comfortably rich. The one who is indulged in the richness of this world. When the normal population went to Bond Street, Rosemary went to London for a normal shopping. So, this is also controversial that simple people went for purchasing to Bond Street and Rosemary used to go to London for her shopping. Her parties represent her richness. She is a typical character who represents the expensive people who purchase expensive things. Like all rich women of the world, Rosemary is also portrayed as a woman who is greatly interested in kindness and charity. But there is a hidden part, and she is very rich, but she is very tender, she is generous, she is a woman of charity and kindness, as we see in the story. When the story, when she comes out from the antique shop, she saw a girl begging for some money. That girl wanted to have a cup of tea. Rosemary thought she should grab this opportunity to help the poor girl. She decided to take that girl at her home and treat her like her sister and doesn't mind the class that she herself belonged, she told to the poor girl. As soon as Rosemary comes out of the shopping complex, she comes across a poor beggar like woman because she begs for a cup of tea. She thought she should grab this opportunity to help the poor girl. And now Rosemary thinks that she is a woman of charity, kindness, so she takes the girl with her. She decided to take the girl at her home and treat her like her sister and doesn't mind the class. So she suggested the girl to have a cup of tea with her home and accompany in her car. She doesn't like the society, the class, the caste she belonged to. Come home to tea with me, she asked the girl. She took the girl at her home and served her well. Everything changed when Mr. Philip called Miss Smith a pretty girl, he said. Now there comes a turning point when both the girl and woman approach or reach the home. Her husband of Rosemary, Mr. Philip, feels surprised to see the girl and addresses her pretty girl. Again, he says she's astonishingly pretty. This line is very indication of making Rosemary jealous. When Rosemary when Philip has said this to Rosemary, she felt insecurity and it was like an acid attack for Rosemary to brought Miss Smith at her home. When her husband Philip addressed the girl as pretty, Rosemary felt very insecure and it was a form of attack on her because it was happened due to the girl accompanied with her. Suddenly she changed her mind from charity to jealousy. Now there is a turning point where Rosemary felt very confused and her charity disappeared. She became jealous because her husband addressed the girl as pretty, astonishingly pretty girl. She started thinking that to allow Miss Smith to stay in the house can be dangerous for her marriage life. So the mind of the character Rosemary changed and she thought that it would make her life in danger. She also started thinking about herself that isn't she a beautiful woman? She compares the beauty of the girl with herself and asks herself whether she is not beautiful. She thought she would not allow Miss Smith to stay with her. And now her jealousy becomes very strong and she thinks that the girl would not stay for a minute or a single day in her home. Finally, she gave some money to Miss Smith and told her to leave the house. At the end of the story, she asked Philip, am I pretty? And ultimately, Rosemary decided to get rid of the girl as soon as possible, and she takes some money in her hand and handed it over to the girl because it was a reason to divide the mind of Rosemary. She asked her husband the same sentences regarding am I pretty, whether she was pretty beautiful or not. When Rosemary met Miss Smith as reader, we can observe that Miss Smith asked for money. The girl, the name Miss Smith, she asked only for a cup of tea. And it was extraordinary for Rosemary to know that Miss Smith has not money. And it was a matter of surprise that Rosemary felt that in the world, like the poor girl, did not have money in her pocket. This suggests that Rosemary is different from other rich people. She can't imagine that somebody would have no money. Because Rosemary belongs to royal aristocratic rich family and she doesn't know whether in the world the people don't have money. They live without money. When Rosemary took Miss Smith in her bedroom for having tea, she leaves Miss Smith's hat and coat on the floor. Both come to house where Philip lived. When Rosemary took Miss Smith in her bedroom and they come for breakfast, tea, she leaves Miss Smith's hat and coat on the floor. And the dress of the poor girl was wet because it was wet in the rain. By doing this, the writer is suggesting that in Rosemary's eyes, Miss Smith is not her equal. That act also suggests class difference between Miss Smith and Rosemary. And the suggestion of the writer is that Rosemary thinks or sees that Miss Smith is not her equal because there is a great difference between Rosemary and her regarding the status, regarding the money, regarding everything. Rosemary changes her attitude towards Miss Smith after Philip tells that he thinks that Miss Smith is pretty, and after hearing this, Rosemary was not only jealous but she also appears too insecure about her own physical appearance. And now there comes a drastic change when her husband Philip wants to get rid of the girl because she wants because Mr. Philip wants that she should get rid of the girl as soon as possible, and he addressed the girl as pretty, astonishingly pretty girl, and this created a sense of jealousy and insecurity in the mind of the character Rosemary. And as soon as Mr. Philip told her these words, Mr. Philip's comment regarding the pretty nature of the girl made Rosemary jealous. And now we come to the conclusion. The character of Rosemary, we can observe jealousy, insecurity, materialism, and class difference. These four things are very important because Rosemary feels jealousy, insecurity. She is full of materialism and she doesn't favor class difference in her life, but now something changed. We consider the character of Rosemary is not only different from other women but also from other rich people. So there comes a change regarding the status, regarding that she is rich, but she doesn't know the difference between rich and poor people in this manner. Students, now the story comes to an end and we have given two sessions on the story. Both the questions both are important The theme and character of Rosemary, very important. Thanks once again. Thanks.